Not sure what to do in certain tiles in Dead by Daylight? In this video series, I'll be going over different tiles and structures found in each map, so that you know what to look out for when looping killers. For this video specifically, I'll be going over the tiles and structures found within the Autohaven Wreckers realm, so across all 5 maps in this realm. First, I'll go through tiles and structures that are common across all maps in this realm, then I'll go through the main building for each map where applicable. Lastly, I'll go ahead and showcase different chases where I use the knowledge of these tiles to loop as effectively as I can. Enjoy! Alright guys, this is the 4-wall thin variations. Sorry about that. There are 2 variations of this one, and I'll go over this one first, but essentially they both have 4 walls as the name suggests, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they both have a window and a pallet. So the similarities between this variation and the other one is that the pallet spawns between the first and second wall. So whether it's this variation or the second one, it's always there. But the first difference is that the window in this variation is at the third wall, while in the second one it's at the fourth one. And another difference is that the walls that contain the pallet are longer in this variation and shorter in the other one. So in my opinion, this is the stronger variation because the pallet and the window connect very well. And yeah, since the window's at the third wall, not the fourth, it just makes it easier to connect, and it gives you more leeway. It makes it harder for the killer if they make a mistake in that sense. But yeah, now I'll just go through different scenarios just so you know what to do. So essentially the goal is to always connect the pallet with the window. So if you start from the pallet, you go back to the window, and then from the window you go back to the pallet, and you repeat. And obviously you may not want to be as predictable every time, but this is a sure way that at least the first few times to get some value from the tile. So first off, if we start at the pallet, and don't worry, I'll show you what to do at the window. Our goal is to reach the window, and let's just say that the pallet is dropped. The killer, and we're standing here, the killer is standing over there. The killer can do 2 things. They can go left or right. So if the killer goes left, what you want to do is stay here, and yeah, based on the heartbeat sensor, if you hear that it's getting louder, then that's your cue to go ahead and take the vault here. And even if you're not so experienced, you can notice at the last second, if the killer does double back, what you do is, you can see right here in this slit between the first and second wall, just above the pallet, if the killer double backs. So if the killer double backs, what you can do instead of vaulting the window and kind of not really, you're basically closing the gap for the killer, so that's kind of bad. So what you're going to do if you see the killer there is just go across the wall instead of vaulting into it, because that will extend your distance from the killer. It'll kind of keep it essentially. So that's what happens if they go there. And just to show you what happens when we reach the window, or essentially, so I just mentioned here, go over here and over there, is that if the killer goes around the corner, basically wait a bit, you have enough time to make it to the pallets. And if the killer decides to, instead of going around this corner, they go across this wall to this corner, you can pretty much see it through this window, and then you'll be able to make it to the pallet. So pretty easy. And now that covers the left side. If they instead go to the right side, what you can do, if you're standing over here, is see that if they're committing or not. If they are still committing, what you can do is sit here and then play the 50-50. So basically you vault, and a neat thing here is that you can also see the shadow. Notice how what direction the shadow is facing. If it's facing this direction, you have an additional information to see whether the killer is coming or not. So if you don't see any shadow approaching, they're probably gonna stay there, so you can even stay put here until they show themselves. But yeah, that's pretty much a neat thing here. So once the shadow comes here, you vault back in, and then if they go over here, you can decide to go over here, or you can vault back. But yeah, it's essentially a mind game at that point. But from this point here, it's kind of a nifty thing that you have at your disposal to use the shadow. So that's coming from the right, and they commit. If they don't commit, you see the double backing, that's a cue for you to just well, wait if they're breaking the pallet, or you can even take the window preemptively. It's up to you. And that's covering now both sides from this side. Now if we're going from this side, yeah, as mentioned, if the killer's over there, you can go over here and see if they're approaching, and then see if they're going to the right. And here you kind of have to use a bit of your heartbeat sensor experience and a bit of experience overall with killers, seeing if you feel like they're going to double back or not. And if you feel like they are, then you just go back here and play the pallet. So this is a bit more unsafe if they approach from the right, because they could just double back and meet you over here. But if they go from the left, again repeating the same thing that I did before, you can use the shadow part as well as the heartbeat sensor, but the shadow part is definitely going to be a good indicator of whether you should vault or not. So that's pretty much it for this tile. Alright guys, this is the second variation of the 4-wall, the thin 4 walls. So I'll just walk you first through the layout and then through the loop points that you want to kind of loop around. So first, of course, there are 4 walls: first, second, third, and fourth. The pallet spawns in between the first and second walls, whereas the window spawns at the last wall, the fourth wall. This variation out of the two thin 4 walls is the less safe variation, because in this variation, essentially, as you can see here, the wall that the pallet is on is shorter. So if you go in here and the killer goes around the corner, it's pretty much 50-50, so you either run through or you can go back here. And essentially the same logic is with the pallet down, so they'll go around the corner and you either vault or you run through. So yeah, as said, this isn't the safest variation. If you have distance, you go ahead and if you want at least some time in your chase, you drop the pallet and then you make your way around the corner and then go around over here. And if you want, you can try and stun the killer, so that in that sense the pallet has to be up, so you don't have to drop it immediately. So maybe the first time, because most killers, what they do is respect it. Both good and, I guess, new killers, what they typically do is just respect this pallet. So from my experience, the best expected play here, with the highest expected value, is to just run through at least once, and that will catch most killers off guard. Because typically, if they get stunned, you pretty much just get away with it and get some distance on them. So that's why they don't typically just run through the first time. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You don't want to. This is one of the weaker tiles, so if you constantly scan your environment and you see this is one of the options, try to see if there are any other better options. Maybe TL wall isn't one, but maybe a long wall jungle gym will be better, or a sort of a 4-lane wider variation will be better. So just try to look for other options is my advice here. Alright guys, this is the 4-lane. This is the set where the lanes are wider. So essentially the walls are further apart from each other. And in this set there are 2 variations. So first, to give an understanding of how the 2 things vary, I'll go over the layout of the first variation. So in this case, there is, as you can see, there are 4 walls. 1, 2, 3, and 4. The window always spawns, regardless of the variation, on the 4th wall, while the pallet can either spawn either in between the 2nd and 3rd wall, or 1st and 2nd. But in this case, it will be first looking at this variation, which has the pallet spawning in this spot between the 2nd and 3rd wall. And this would be the stronger variation of the two because the pallet is closer to the window. So that means that if you manage to vault over here or to bluff the killer, saying that you won't drop the pallet and they respect it, you can just go ahead and go for the window here and vault. Now, the nice thing about this is that you want to essentially rotate in between these two safe points. So if you see the killer is going to the left, you go ahead and go to the right, make sure that they're committing, and then you reach back to the pallet, which is a bit safe. And if they, of course, go from the right, you go ahead and do the same logic, but except from the opposite side. And then you go in here and reach the pallet. Or if you have enough distance, you go ahead here and reach this side to essentially use up more time before a mind game has to occur. But yeah, once you're in this spot, you essentially want to play between the pallet and the window. And in case you have the pallet dropped, there's a kind of a nice thing about this pallet in that with this wall, and with pretty much that wall as well, but with this one as well, there are essentially 2 mind games if you're playing it against a killer who comes from this side. So if the killer comes from this side, and you can vault the pallet, and even if they think that you're going to vault the pallet and go back here, there are essentially 2 options that you can still take, and therefore that they have to take as well. So there are essentially 2 layers of mind games. Essentially 2 50-50s that they have to guess correctly in order to get the hit. So in this case, let's just say they already won the first 50-50. The second 50-50 is whether you vault back or you walk or you run through here. So basically, how you win is determined on what action the killer takes here. So if you vault and they go for the swing, you get hit. So that makes it so that if you don't actually vault and you keep running through, if they do swing, they'll actually miss and hit the pallet because you're not in that area. You just keep on running through. Whereas if you think for some reason the killer thinks you bluff a lot, then they might catch up to your antics and actually not swing. In that case, that is a bluff version in this mind game for the survivor rate, which is just running through. So if you think they think you're bluffing a lot, then you can consider vaulting back. Now, the same logic can be kind of applied for this wall. So let's just say that the killer is over here instead of here, and you decide to vault, and the killer decides also to go through here instead of committing. The thing is that you can't really do the same logic as fluidly, so I guess you don't have as much leeway, because as you can see here, once you vault, you can't run smoothly to the right. You have to first go downwards and then to the right, because there's this little fridge here blocking the way. So I guess that's a bit of consideration when you're looping. So if anything, you have to make sure that you guess more correctly, and you do it with better timing. Alright guys, this is the second variation of this set. The set of the 4 walls that have very wide lanes in relation to the first set. So in this case there are 4 walls, so this is the first, second, third, and fourth. And as with both variations, the window is always at the 4th wall. But in this variation, the difference is that instead of the pallet being between the 2nd and 3rd wall, it is between the 1st and 2nd wall. So in here, the advantage of this variation is that the pallet is between 2 decently long walls. So on the first wall, the first one, It's pretty long, so as a standard M1 killer, they cannot get you here if you're over here. So if they, let's just say you drop the pallets and they go all the way over here, you have enough time to essentially go over and vault the pallet without being safe. And even then, you can see if they're coming over here. It's not the same story with ranged killers, because yeah, they can just try and man game you here, and you can try and see whether they go past this corner or go back here. If you wait as long as you would with the standard M1 killer, let's just say it's a huntress, if you vault at the same time and she readies her hatchet, you will get hit here, right? And kind of the same logic here, where you wait here, and they have this little part here which they can use to just hit you over this part here, because there is no wall here. So that's a little thing to consider here. And there's this other wall here. Wait, just before I go over this wall, so with that case, with range killers such as Huntress, maybe even Pyramid Head or Nemesis, if you think if you have no other reason to think otherwise, then you can just go ahead and vault just a bit earlier, because that will kind of throw them off guard, and then you can go and loop as you would. But obviously you want to adapt to how they adapt, so it's not a sure thing against ranged killers. Now with the second wall, it's not as long as the one here, but it's still decent. So in here you can see that there is a bit of an opening here. It's not fully covered, so you can see whether the killer is approaching. So if you see that they're over here, right past this little stove, you go ahead and vault. And just as a little mind game thing here, they have to guess, I guess, an additional time. So if they do guess that you're gonna vault when they're at that point, they can do two things. You can either vault back, or you can keep running. So that means that they either have to swing early, and if you walk away, or run away rather, you don't get hit and you win the mind game. Or if for some reason they think that you're gonna bluff and walk through, but actually you do go ahead and vault, they won't be able to swing in time because they're already far enough across the pallet that their swing would miss and hit the pallet. So there's just a little nice thing you can do over here. So these two walls are pretty decent. This one is very long. This one is decently long. That allows you a different, I guess, a safety layer of mind game should the killer go back. If you do vault in the first place. Alright guys, this is the long wall jungle gym. So it's one of the strongest tiles out there, given how safe it is. So I'll first give you a little tour of the layout. So in here there's an L-shaped wall with a pallet here and a wall right there, and then there is at the end here a long wall, hence the name Long Wall Jungle Gym. So what you want to do, as with most pallet window tiles, is connect these two loop points together. So you want to loop from the pallet to the window, and then from the window back to the pallet. And most killers here would, once the pallet is down, they will just break it, because it's pretty hard to mind game it as a standard M1 killer, even with like Bloodlust 1 and 2. It's a bit of a waste of their time. They're better off just kicking it. But in here, I'll just show you what options you have depending on the scenario. So if let's say you're getting chased by and the killer is kind of close by, you don't have much distance in which you can't really kind of hide where you are, then yeah, you have the option. Let's just say they're coming from here, you're over here, you can either drop the pallet and go for the window. So depending on whether there's a gen about to be completed and you're injured, maybe you want to drop the pallet so that the gen doesn't get completed. Or if you're healthy and there is no gen to be completed, then you may want to consider playing risky. But again, it goes against, depending on the type of killer you're going against, that also factors into whether they're going to respect or not. I find that newer killers respect more than more experienced killers. So in here, yeah, you can drop or not, and then if you drop, they have to break it, and then you can make your way to the window and go to any other tiles. Or if it's not from that side, you can also go from this side to that side. Let's just say here you have a filler pallet, and you just want to contain the chase over here because maybe there are 2 gens over there. But yeah, essentially, this is also why windows can be a good perk. And also another, just to finish off before I continue, why scanning your environment makes you give better options, so that in case there's a gen there, you know that you can go over here because it's not a dead zone. So over here, I just covered the scenario in which they're right by you, so you can either bluff and keep on running or just drop it. And the same logic kind of applies here. So in here, funnily enough, you see that there's this gap in this wall. So if the killer isn't looking between this gap with a red stain, you can just actually, and they're going through that way over here, you can actually go around and see where they are because their location is shown and they don't really see yours. But if the killer is paying attention, then yeah, if you go over here, it's you have to be a bit tight in your movement because you can still make it against a standard M1 killer, make it to another loop to the pallet. So over here, if they go from the right side or left side, so if they keep on committing from the left side, you can actually go back if you loop tightly enough to the pallets. And if they approach from the right, so if they double back, you still have enough time to reach the pallet. So that's a kind of a neat, nice little thing about this. And yeah, thing is, if they're not paying attention to that, and you see that they're going through, this is against less experienced killers, you can just go ahead in here and you have 2 options. One is, as I mentioned, if you have nearby loops like a filler pallet, you can just go ahead and connect it together, and they might not even think that you went there, because how scratch marks works is that they can take 1 or 2 seconds to appear. So coupled with the fact that most survivors keep to the jungle gym, most killers would just go ahead and keep continuing without scanning. And even if they do scan, it's a bit late in that sense, so you do have some leeway to reach to this pallet over here. And yeah, apart from reaching this pallet, if there's a dead zone, you can actually just loop around this side of the area, this side of the wall, and then see whether they're going to go back or not. So if they go from the right, you go back to the pallet. If they go from the left, you go and you go over here. And here's a bit of a mind game as well, and as well as this one. But this one, if you're funny enough, if you're quick enough, you can drop the pallet and maybe stun them, or they have to just respect it, or not. They would have to even swing for it. So in the case that they can reach you at the pallet, if they were to swing early enough, they would hit you. So in that case, you can even fake going for the drop and then going for the window for an additional loop. But that's just really subtle stuff. For the most part, you just kind of want to treat this as mind game. If they go from the right and then they double back, you either want to drop it or just not go there anymore and repeat. But essentially, at that point, it's a mind game. Just want to add before I finish this long old jungle gym section is that I covered the pallet part, but yeah, just so we know over here, once you're at the window, you want to make sure that you know where the killer is coming from. But either way, you have enough distance to make it back to the pallet. So if you go over here and you see the killer going to your left here, just make sure that they are committing, that they go past the corner, and when they do so, you go to this corner and then repeat the same logic, so that way, in case they double back, they don't actually get anything out of it. So they go back here, and essentially the logic remains the same. You can see, you can make your way back to this window and see whether they keep continuing. And if you see the red stain isn't there when it should be, then it means that they're over here. And then yeah, if they keep on continuing here, you have enough distance to make it to this pallet. And then the same logic applies if they go to the right. You just check first, and even then it's better because you are closer to the pallet, right? You're really aligned with it. They go across that corner, you wait a bit, you go here and see if they commit, and if they don't commit, same logic, you go back to the window and see where they are going, or if they're double backing, that kind of thing. And yeah, if they keep committing, you just go to the pallet. So there you go. Alright guys, this is the L wall jungle gym. So the reason why it's called an L wall jungle gym is because the wall that the window's on is in the shape of an L. So in here it has similar size and kind of a look as a long wall jungle gym, but the difference is that the pallet spawns over here, whereas the window spawns over there. Whereas in the long wall jungle gym, the wall would have been complete over here, and there would have been a window here, and the pallet would have spawned over here. So in this one is the less strong variation of the two variations. But essentially what you can do is just, you can either play it safe, so once you reach the pallet, you can just drop it if you need to. Maybe the gen is close to being finished, and you don't want the killer to get pop value or any pain resonance kind of value. So you can play it safe, or if you want, you can play a bit riskier and try to mind game it a bit. So I'll also show you that in certain parts there's a bit of a way to kind of prevent the mind game from happening, even if you're not at the pallet. So in here, let's just say that the killer goes from the right here, they kind of push you, so you wait a bit just to see if they commit. And using the heartbeat sensor, that's something that will help you not just in this tile but other tiles on all realms, just to get a better sense of where the killer is coming from, if they're committing or they're double backing, in this case going back past this corner. But once you're at this corner, if you sit here, no matter where the killer comes from, if they're a standard M1 killer, you are good to go. So if they come from the right, you make your way to the window, and if they come from the left, you make your way to the pallet. Alright, and try to face your character here, because I feel like there is a bit of movement waste whenever you have to turn your character. So just since this wall is shorter than this wall, so essentially in order to get to the window, that takes longer than you having to get to the pallet. You want to face in the direction towards the window, so there's less time needed for you to reach the window. So in here, if the killer comes from the right, you have enough time to reach the window. But yeah, if they come from the left, you go to the pallet. So it's a nice little thing there. And just to finish off, if they come from the right, once you're at this window and you see them coming through there are two things they can do, and that is either committing through the corner or double backing and instead going across here, so from here over to here, in which they will hit you if you keep on going over here. So this is essentially kind of a mind game, and again, using the heartbeat sensor and experience with kind of killers do what in this kind of scenario will give you a better chance of not getting hit. So in my experience, if the killer is new, so you can base it off their movement, maybe even some sort of tactics that you're using, but essentially whether they respect or not, or respect the pallets in any previous chases that you had with them, that'll be a good indication of whether they are gonna take, commit or double back. So if they're kind of a new killer, they'll typically just commit, and that way you can just go through and reach the pallet. If you think they're a bit more experienced, they're trying to be sneaky with it, or maybe they think that you're kind of a bluffer, they would just go around and double back. So in this case, you would just go around over here and just wait over here until you see them at that corner over there, and then you keep going, see if they commit. So once they're over here, if they go past the corner right now and you have good enough reaction time, you can just go back here and keep an eye out whether they're whether they keep going, and you can go for the window again, or you can go for the pallets. So that's pretty much it. And once you have enough time spent on this tile and you just want to go to another one, you can just drop the pallet and ensure that you can go to another tile, because it's pretty hard to mind game this as a killer, at least as an M1 killer. So you drop it, they break it, or if they want to mind game it, you can see if they go in here and they go through that corner, and then you can just go ahead and go to the pallet again and essentially use these check spots to ensure that whether they're committing or not. So yeah, typically a killer would just break this and then you go to the next pallet. So that's what happens if the pallet's dropped and you go to the left. If you notice that they're going to the right, well, guess what? You just keep it here and you stay at this point so that you can keep an eye on that check on that spot and this spot as well. So this is a good place to spot if the killer is committing or not committing. So that's pretty much it. Alright guys, this is the LT walls. So this is pretty common in most realms. So as we can see here, they are essentially two sets of walls. So the first one is an L-shaped wall, and the second one is a T-shaped wall, and they both have windows in them. So they are essentially 50-50s. I'm not so sure about this one. I think there may be a way to have two 50-50s for the killer to guess correctly in order to get a hit. But yeah, this isn't the strongest tile out there. So if you had a choice between running to this tile and maybe to, say, that tile over there, that's a pallet, then I will recommend going to a pallet based tile. But I'll just go over this one just for thoroughness. So as we can see here, I'll go over the T-wall. So typically the killer would go from that side or from that side. Essentially, whatever the case may be, you just want to hold your check spot over here just to see if they go from that side or that side. But essentially where the mind game happens is that when they force you to, let's just say that they come from that side, they run over here, so you have to go over here, and then they're over there and you're over here. They're essentially forcing you to either vault or to run through. So in here, if let's just say the killer decides to force you through over here, you go over here and you vault and they keep on going, that means you win the mind game. If you vault and they double back, you still have a chance, but overall conceptually they would win the mind game. So what I mean by there's still a chance here is that for this particular side of the wall, you notice how this side has a shorter back wall than this side over here. That makes it so that if the killer, let's just say, is running from you're over here and you see that they're over there, you go over here and you wait until they have to commit, and then you vault here. If you don't see that they've gone through, that more likely means that they've actually gone back here. So you can just medium vault here and you would be good. Now keep in mind this works for standard M1 killers. The game might be different if they have an anti-loop such as Nemesis. So it's not going to be easy for all killers. If they have anti-loop or their range, then yeah, it's going to be harder because they have that power in hand. So yeah, that's the T-wall. So for this one, for the double layer mind game, it works from the short wall here, the right side, but it doesn't work for the long wall, because if you see that they haven't gone past the corner, that means they're over here. But since they have a short distance to cover, they should hit you over here. So if you want to try and essentially play this tile, you want to try and aim for this particular corner, the right side of the T instead of the left side, because that should give you most of the time a decent possibility to not get hit, because they're essentially two mind games that the killer has to win. So if you vault here, they have to guess that. Also, if you vault back, they have to guess that. Then we have the L wall here, so that's essentially just a 50-50. So if the killer goes from over here, they'll force you to run over here, and then make sure that they're also committing. So if you see them back over there, then keep on going, and then you'll eventually reach this point in which you'll go ahead and have to either vault or run through. Now, obviously, if you think the killer is gonna go back to the other side, you run through. If you think they're gonna think that you're bluffing, you actually vault. And thing is here, a little note: if you do think that they are gonna go back, and you do bluff it, make sure that you stick to the wall, because it could be that they hear you not vaulting, and then they double back, and that can be kind of awkward. Because if you fake and then you're over here instead of hugging the wall tightly, you're kind of in this awkward spot where essentially you're over there and you're over here, and you can't get hit depending on when they decide to go back, and you can't even reach this little window here. But even if they have a bit of more distance between you and themselves, meaning that it's better for you, you pretty much would have to still resort to this vault right here. So it's not exactly the best thing to do here, because if you were to hug it tightly and they go over there, you essentially can go over this same wall again and essentially spend more time without mind gaming. That's essentially what makes loops long. Just finding ways on just avoiding mind games. So you see them go over here, you see them also go over there, and then you repeat the same mind game over here. Now obviously you may not want to stick to this to this L wall, because let's just say that they double back. Well, they don't double back, but you hug the wall tightly and you see that they're actually coming off from over there, and you also know that let's just say that this particular window you vaulted it 2 times, so the 3rd time would mean that you can't vault it again, so you want to switch to this one. So hugging it tightly means that you can see whether the killer is going to this part, so that if you see them going over there, you go ahead and vault over here. But if you see that they actually didn't go through that side but through that side, don't worry. You don't have to take the risk of taking the vault immediately. You can just go for another loop. And I guess that's the best thing for the killer to do in this case, to make you use up the 3rd vault. But yeah, that's just why you want to go ahead and hug the wall tightly as soon as you fake it. Alright, so this is the long wall, short wall tile. So in here, essentially composed of 2 walls, both in the shape of an L, a short wall and a long wall here, and in the middle there's a pallet. So this is a decently safe tile. The thing is, depending on the orientation of the tile in relation to the center of the map, it can change in strength. So I'll cover that in a bit, but for now, what happens is that you can play it safe, so you can drop it and stay more on the long wall side instead of the short wall side, because on the long wall side, let's just say that they don't break it, let's just say they try to go from that side to over here, it's long enough so that you can react. There is no mind game, so even if they go past a certain point and you vault and they guess that you're going to vault, they quote unquote guess, you have enough time where even if they go to this side again, you have enough time to vault back and without getting hit. So it's a safe position from the long wall side. And by that token, if you want to try and play from this short side, it's riskier because yeah, they can reach you if they guess correctly that you're going to vault. So over here you'll get hit if they double back. So it's not as safe. So this concept will play into what I'm going to explain next. So the orientation of the long wall, short wall tile is gonna determine whether it's guaranteed to be safe to go into the center of the map. So the center of the map is where you typically want to go, because that's where, you know, pallets. That's where safe. Well, not safe, but that's where you can get pallets. You can go to other tiles. You essentially can extend your loop without going to a dead zone. And with that said, if the long wall is facing the inside of the map, that's good, because that means that they have to break it. Because if they were, as mentioned, you can go back and forth, and they would actually essentially have to break it. So once they go over there and they break it, you can go into the center of the map. However, if let's just say this isn't the center of the map, but this is, right? So the short wall is facing the inner side of the map, and you would go to that one. That means that if you were to try and stay more on the longer side, like let's just say the killer goes around here, and you don't know whether they're gonna stay, if they're gonna commit or double back. So you kind of want to stay more on the long side. But the thing is, if they break it, now this tile is not safe. So in that sense, in order to be closer to the side of the inner map, you have to be close to the short wall, because if they do break it, now you, instead of staying on the long side and then they're breaking and then them seeing you and having a head start on you and hitting you before you reach the next pallet or tile, you're on the short side. And on the short side, it's mind gameable instead of the long side. So that's why it's the orientation of this tile determines whether it's safe to make it to the next tile. So in this case, you would have to mind game it, and yeah, depending on the killer, you may want to vault or not. But yeah, it's essentially a 50-50. Maybe you want to try and go for the stun, but yeah, if you notice that when you're scanning an environment that the long wall, short wall has its short side facing the inner side of the map, then maybe you don't want to go to that to this tile. So this is pretty much it. And the last thing, some killers may want to try and mind game you on this one. So let's just say that you're over here on the right side and they're over there on the left side. So obviously it wouldn't be safe if they just commit to it, so they go in a circle and you go in the same direction in the circle, because you see that they're over there and you're over here, and if they don't break, they just continue over here and you can make it back to the loop, and it's pretty much a waste of time. What some killers can do, especially experienced killers, is that once you reach this point where you don't have vision of them anymore, they double back. So this is where relying on your heartbeat sensor is gonna pretty much tell away their position. So if you hear your heartbeat sensor getting louder and you still don't see the killer going past that point, you can be pretty sure that the killer is going behind this wall. So you want to go back to over here, the pallets. So yeah, that pretty much covers the long wall, short wall, jungle tile. Alright guys, this is the Y variant gym, and in here I'll just first walk you through the layout, and then I'll show you how to connect this pallet and the window. So first of all, there's the pallet over here. It's between these two walls, and then there's this L-shaped wall over here with a window in it. So what you want to do is ideally loop from the pallet to the window, and then from the window to the pallet, so a loop. So what you do here is that if you're standing over here, so I'll go through each scenario. If you're standing through here and the killer's over there, the killer can go through two different ways. They can go left or right. So if they go left, you first stand here and you wait a bit, and then what you want to do is that you want to use your heartbeat sensor, so how loud the heartbeat is, as a good indicator of where the killer is. Because obviously there's a wall there, so you won't be seeing if they're gonna commit or they're gonna double back. So using the heartbeat sensor, and this comes better with experience with the game, as it gets louder, once it gets past a certain point, you go ahead and make your way to the window over here, and then you make your way back to the loop. And The way you want to do it is kind of a similar fashion. In here, using the heartbeat sensor, kind of try and tell what the killer is. If they're going across that corner, you go over here and go back to the pallets. Or if you feel that the heartbeat sensor is actually coming closer a bit quicker than in that scenario in which they go past the corner, you actually go to this part and you go to the loop, to the pallet. Yeah, that covers what happens if the killer goes to the left. But if the killer decides to double back, you would see them, well, double backing by the heartbeat sensor, and then they can either break the pallet, in which you just take that opportunity to just go away to another tile, or they just keep on mind gaming and they go to the right. And when they go to the right, what you want to do is stand at this point, so they can either commit or double back. So by committing, I mean they go to the right here, and by double back, I mean they go to the left here. So if they commit, oops, sorry about that, my connection's a bit shit now, but yeah, if they go to the right, you have enough time to reach the pallet. And if they go to the left, you can go back here to the pallet and play the 50-50. But just before I move on, if they do come in from the right and you go over here, you can vault and play the kind of 50-50, but yeah, by vault I mean vault early. But what you can do also are two different things. You can run by and either go to the pallet, to the window, and then or go to the pallet, or you can stay a bit here, stay here for a bit, and then vault a bit later. So why those options exist and why they can make sense is that they're kind of counterparts to each other. So if the killer thinks that you're gonna vault, they're gonna try and swing early, and if you run by, that means that they would have swung already if they thought that you would have vaulted. So in that sense, you can just keep on running and either go to the window or go back over here to the pallet. If you're going against another killer, so there's different types of killers. Obviously, the ones who respect more and the ones who are who don't respect as much. So you have to kind of figure out throughout the match, through previous loops, what kind of killer you're going against. Obviously, it's not a guarantee, but it helps to make better guesses. So if they think that you're kind of a bluffer, they'll think that you'll run through. So in that sense, and if you do run through and they also don't swing, they would hit you before you reach the window or the pallet. So in that case, to counter those types of killers, again, reliably, it's not always a guaranteed. Instead of running by, you just wait here for a bit and then you vault. So, and then you have to play the 50-50 mind game again. But hopefully that gives you a bit more clarity on the different options you have when looping killers on pallets. So yeah, that's what you do if the killer goes and commits over here and you stand over here. So that pretty much covers the first part in which you stand over here. And if you're looping from that side, kind of the same logic applies. If they're going here to the left, you can stand over here, and if you see them committing, you just go ahead and make your way over here to the 50-50. And if instead they go not to the left but to the right, you go ahead and use kind of the heartbeat sensor thing I was talking about and use that to go to the window. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Alright guys, this is the I variant gym. So I'm just going to give you a quick tour so you can get a bit of a layout here. So here there's the pallet, there are two walls, one is long and one is like a kind of a C shape, if you will, maybe a T shape. And here is a L wall with a window in it. So what you want to do in here is just basically connect this pallet to that window, and you can do so reliably. This is against M1 killers. So against killers with anti-loop, you have less leeway, but I guess a good starting point to understand how to go about this kind of tile is by treating it as if you were going against an M1 killer. So in here, we just always want to connect from the pallet to the window and from the window to the pallet, so a loop. So in here, let's just say that, and by the way, you can also drop this, and you can do so knowing that it's pretty safe. So if the killer goes onto the left, it's a pretty long wall. You can even sit here at the pallet, and you have good enough of a reaction time. You can just vault over as soon as you see them go past the corner. And yeah, so if you drop the pallet, let's just say I drop it here. You just want to stand in here and see where the killer goes, and you always make sure to also use the heartbeat, so how loud the heartbeat is, to try and determine where they are behind walls. So in this case, behind this wall. If you hear it getting a bit louder, then they probably are past the point in which you can, go here to this window without them going double backing, going over here, and you can just reach this window safely and see what their next move is. If you hear the heartbeat getting not getting a bit louder, then they are probably going to double back, and you can even see here from this point that whether they are double backing, and they can either break the pallet, in which you can either go to another tile, or they won't break the pallet and they'll still try to mind game you. So in that case, they'll try to go to the right. So in that case, you want to go over here and see again at this point whether they're going to break the pallet or whether they're turning the corner. And here you can make your way to this pallet and basically see again if they're coming across here. So basically you can see this kind of logic that I'm going over and over again, which is, are they double backing or are they not, and just trying to use what available check spots you have, as well as the heartbeat sound, to see whether they're committing or they're double backing. But in here, once they reach, I guess maybe this point here, about this little yellow brown fridge, that is when you vault. And even then, if they come back past that corner to the right, since this is a pretty long wall, if you have a good enough reaction time, you can just vault back if they guess correctly that you do vault to this side in the first place. So yeah, that's covering that's covering this side. So if they and that side, so that's covering from here. If you're over here, yeah, as mentioned, if they come from this side, just make sure that they're committing, and even if they guess that you're going to go vault back here, you have enough time, and if you have enough reaction time, to fall back here. And yeah, if you see them come back here, then it's basically the same logic, where you want to see from this point if they double back or they commit. So here at this window, basically the same logic. If you see them coming from this side, you want to just check here for a bit, and based on the heartbeat sound, this is a bit of a mind game here, because yeah, you have to kind of commit a bit early due to distance to the pallet. But in here, most of the time, you can just, with experience, tell with your heartbeat sensor whether the killer is, committing through this corner or double backing and going behind this wall. So in here is a bit of a mind game. So if you want to start safely, you start the pallet when you approach this gym, and then in here is a bit safer, because if they do go past that corner, you can make your way to the pallet pretty safely. So that's from that side, and yeah, from this side it's pretty mind gamey. You have to commit early, and yeah, if they come from that side, you just make your way over to the pallet, always looking back and seeing where the killer is. So yeah, that's pretty much this jungle gym. Alright guys, this is the double window tile. So essentially there are two sets of walls. There's this one that has a window, and that one that has a window. And this is kind of similar to the LT walls, in that they're both walls that have windows, so there's essentially no pallet, which typically makes a tile safer. So not ideal, but not the worst even. The walls are somewhat decent length. Against an M1 killer, it's not that strong, but against range killers, it is a bit stronger. But yeah, essentially at both ones, They're kind of 50-50. So if you go over here, you can either run past, or you can just vault. And against killers that are a bit stronger, you just want to run by, because typically they just think that you're going to vault by. Whereas for killers that are a bit newer, so based on their pathing, based on their decision making, with experience you'll kind of tell which killer you're going against. You typically just want to vault. And then with this tile, yeah, it's the same thing, 50-50. So I'm not really going to cover this tile that much. But yeah, one last thing is that about the range part, if you're going against someone like Huntress or Deathslinger, you want to be careful about how you just go through and approach any of these windows. So particularly is that one over there, because if you're starting over here, for example, and the Huntress over here, if you're both running through this direction and you decide to go through here, that leaves a pretty decent target for you to get hit by the Huntress if she once she readies her hatchet. So this is quite a long stretch, so it's not that she has a split second. So you typically just want to go over here and go for this window instead with a fast vault. And then if she doubles back, just check in here, you have more distance. They're 110 killers, so you have more leeway. But yeah, that's pretty much the double window tile. Alright, so this is the infamous Killer Shack. It is a reliably strong tile, so just for a bit of a layout here first, it's, well, as you can see, it's a shack. It has two doors, the first one, the second one. This is where the pallet is, and in the middle, on this wall, there is this window. So what you typically want to do in here against a standard M1 killer is just, funny enough, you see most people go for the fast vault here, but here you can just stand at this point, and even if they reach over here, you can medium vault and they wouldn't catch you. As long as you have, of course, good, decent connection, like 40, maybe even 50 ms. But from my experience, this is a reliable way of just not getting hit. So you don't even have to position yourself with a fast vault and kind of risk it like that. So in that case, that's just an easy way to ensure that you don't get mind game there. And here, if you want to play it a bit risky, instead of, if you want to get more juice out of this tile, it's instead of just going straight for the pallet, you can go for a vault here. So that would work against most killers, but let's just say that the killer can maybe expect that you go for the fast vault. What you can do is that you can fake it. So if you're going against a more experienced killer, this is something that they can expect. So this is something that you can keep in mind of, just in case you need more, if you want to play it risky, and perhaps like your team is really down, like most of you are near death hook, and you need a really long chase, so you're gonna need to risk it a bit. And in that case, what you can do, instead of going for the fast vault here, as they're going around the corner, you can just fake it, and that will get a swing from them. So that will bring you over here, and you can also play the mind game over here. So you can fake it, or immediately go over here and get another loop out of the Killer Shack. So that's pretty much most of it. Of course, you can drop it once you have enough time. And the thing is, like, even if you drop it from either side, since the Killer Shack is decently sized, if you want to go over here, you can of course go over there to the next tile. Or maybe if this is a dead zone, you can go ahead and check that the killer is coming through, and then you can go ahead. Let's just say I want to reach that filler pallet over there by the truck. And yeah, just make sure that the killer is committing, and you'll be able to ensure that you get to there without any issues as well. So if they're committing, cool, from the right, you keep them going. If they're double backing from the left, well, now you just go over here and go over through right here. And using your heartbeat sensor, of course, you can use that as an additional tell to see if the killer is committing or double backing when you're trying to go to the next tile or pallet. So yeah, that's pretty much Killer Shack. Alright, so this is the crane. This is the strongest structure in this realm. So as you can see, as the name suggests, it's a crane with a bunch of cars underneath its little handle here, so, or claw. But here I'll just go over a few things. So first, as you can see, as first for the layout, it's just a pretty circular loop, and then here there's also the bunch of cars which you can also loop around. But here, one of the main features about it is that it has a high window up this ramp and into its little room, and it is high enough so that when you land, it activates balanced landing, and you can go over it again, or you can go to another tile that has no people working on gens or healing. And yeah, the next part is that you can pretty much go around it and not be mind gamed if you pay attention to the gap in between the wheels and the chassis. And as you can see, at pretty much any point, you can see the killer. Well, if you have windows or any aura perk, it might be actually counterproductive here, but even then, you'll be able to see for the most part where the killer is at each point. So you can keep on running and see if the killer is double backing, and essentially get more out of this loop right here. Oh, and then once you reach here, you don't even have to drop the pallet. You can even, if you have time, instead of just standing still here waiting for the killer for 1 or 2 seconds, you can go over here and extend the loop by a bit. This is advisable for most killers, but if you're going against a short killer such as Chucky, Onryo, or even Legion, I think they're that short enough. But for most killers, you should be fine. The thing is, you can see them above this bunch of cars, and even then, if you position correctly in the middle and you have good enough reaction time, you can go ahead and go to the pallets with no issue. And yep, once you've pretty much exhausted, you've essentially saturated this whole loop and this little loop right here, you can decide to drop the pallets, and or you can decide to greet it. But this is quite a big loop. I mean, you've already looped for about, I don't know, 15 seconds or so before you have to reach this mind game point. But yeah, depending on your situation, if there's a gen about to be completed, then yeah, just go ahead and drop this. If you're against like an if you're against a killer that has an anti-loop ability such as Nemesis, you may want to drop this early, or maybe Huntress. Is all up to you, depending on the situation. But yeah, this is essentially the crane, and out of all the structures out there, this is the strongest. So just keep that in mind. Alright guys, this is the demo of this tile, or basically the structure. So this is the first variation of the connected buses. So by connected buses, I mean that the buses are pretty much touching. I'll go over the second set of bus variations in which they are pretty much split. And yeah, so for this one, we see that these buses are connected over here. This is the back side, this is the front side, and this is essentially the stronger variation of the two. So just for a brief intro, the back side has a window and the front side has a pallet. And with this back side here, the reason why this variation of this set is strong is because it has this window over here, and as you can see, you can't really be mind game with the killer. So if the killer decides to go from the right side, you can see if they really are going to commit. And as you can see, there's a pretty long wall, so even if you don't really time it correctly, you can just go ahead and wall back, and you should be good. Or if the killer is coming from the left side, you can just prepare yourself here, and then just see if they approach, and then go in here, and you should be good. And even then, if they manage to double back correctly, you have this pallet, which is acts as a safety net for you. And yeah, even then, even if you make a medium vault, let's just say here, you should be good if you just make a straight line to this pallet. And just to reassure you how reliable this fast vault is, even then with the medium vault you probably still reach the pallet, and up with the fast vault you're gonna 100% reach the pallet. You just see in here, let's just say you're on top of this ramp. Just make sure you're on top of this ramp, because if you just try and go, you might be blocked by this little hitbox by the wall here. It's a bit of an invisible hitbox. You can just run your way to a straight line, and you'll be able to be in an angle where you can go ahead and fast vault instead of medium vault. So that's pretty much it. And that's for the window part. The nice thing also, and this is a bit of a niche knowledge, is that this particular pallet is strong when dropped. So if you drop it right now, you can see actually from this side that there's a slit between this metal grate and the window behind it of the killer. As you can see that if the killer perhaps reaches around this part, then that's where you want to go ahead and vault. And over here also, there's kind of a funny thing. There's also a little gap in here between these two lockers. You see at the top of my head. If the killer is tall enough, which most killers are, and then you have to make sure that you tilt upwards a bit or downwards, however you want to view it. You can see that where the killer goes from here. And as soon as you see it, you want to go ahead and vault over to the other side. Now, obviously, this isn't the strongest of loops. Even with the slit and gap tips that I gave you, if the killer has an anti-loop such as Huntress or Nemesis, or maybe they even have Bloodlust 2 or 3, then there's still a chance that you might get caught. So keep that in mind. But yeah, most of the time the killers, after failing a few times, they will kick the pallet, and if they kick it from here, you can just go ahead and go to the next tile. Obviously, if you can kick from here, you can go to the next tile, and you should be good. Or you can go ahead and use the window. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Alright guys, this is the connected buses. This is the variation in which the window is at the back of the bus instead of the middle. So in here, as you can see, the buses are connected. Of course, they're split in half. The back is on this side while the front is on that side. And the window always spawns at the back of the bus, while the pallet spawns in between these tires and this huge rock right here. And the neat thing about this is that if you have some distance from the killer, you can make a loop first before having to commit to any of these points, either the pallet or the window. So what I mean by that is that it pretty much can't be mind gamed. So if you're always paying attention to your surroundings, you'll see where the killer is. And you can also use the heartbeat sensor to sort of figure out the killer's location if you don't have visibility on him at any point. So in this case, you can see that there are some gaps between the bus. So here, there. So it's pretty hard to get mind gamed looping around the whole bus before you reach the pallet or the window. So let's just say we start here. The killer is behind this gap. I can see whether they're double backing or not, this window, and then I keep going, and then based on the heartbeat sensor, if I if I hear it's going loud, then he's double backing. If if I hear that it's not getting loud, then I can go ahead and make a whole another loop. And as you can see here, there's also a gap here. So in case it double backs at any point, you pretty much have visibility on the killer. So yeah, same logic applies in reverse, of course. So in here, once we reach this pallet, from either side, it's a pretty strong pallet. I recommend you play around the pallets on the window, because this is a pretty safe pallet. See, this rock is pretty long in circumference, so it's kind of hard for the killer to mind game you here. So what I found out, what I kind of tested it, is that there are kind of points. Basically, these trees can be used to figure out when you should vault. So if I were to drop this pallet here, and I'll show you what it looks like with the killer. So as you can see, once the killer, let's just say we're on this side, on the right side of the pallet, and the killer reaches this tree. Sorry, my game is kind of lagging out on my PC, but yeah. As you can see, once they reach this point, that's when you vault. And you have enough time to make it. So if they do double back, if they guess that you are going to vault and they go over here, you have to play the same logic. So if they go up until here, you don't vault, you don't vault, you don't vault, and now you vault. So you can basically use the trees as basically thresholds for when you should vault. So once he's here, I vault back and the process repeats itself. Now once he has bloodless 1 or 2, this becomes obviously harder, so keep in mind this is not a guaranteed thing if the killer decides to choose it. But then there's the cost, of course, that they have to spend more time. I think it's like 15 seconds for each bloodlust level, so it's definitely not something that is it's definitely going to cost them some time. So even with the fact that it is mind gameable, at certain points you'll still use up a lot of their time if they do decide to pursue this chase. And yeah, that's pretty much the this variation. Most killers would just kick the pallet after failing the mind games 1 or 2 times, and depending on the side you are, if they kick it from there, you go through the window here. If it's still unblocked, but even then if it's not, you go through from here. Or if they kick it from here, well then it's just free estate over here. So this is pretty much the variation. Alright guys, this is the disconnected buses variation. So in here, the bus is split into 2 halves. So the front half is over here, while the back half is over here. And basically the pallet is in the front end, while the window is at the back end. So here I would just recommend, simply put, just to play the pallet. If you have Lithe, sure, go ahead and use one of this one, and just, even if they guess that you're going to go vault, you can just make your way to the another tile. So that's pretty simple for which one you should go to. But in here, if you don't have Lithe, then you probably want to play this one. And the reason is that there are some nifty little gaps that you can use to have a better understanding of where the killer is, so see better if the killer is committing or not. So as you can see from here, I drop the pallets, they're over there, and they come over here. I see that if they go past, I don't know, maybe this point, I go ahead and vault. And the nice thing here about it is that there's a little crack here, so if the killer is tall enough, like Nemesis, Pyramid Head, maybe even Trapper, you can even use that to see if the killer is going past that point or not. Alright guys, this is the truck. This is one of the most lackluster structures out there. It's definitely weaker than the crane, and in relation to the buses, I guess if you were comparing to the split buses variation, then it's perhaps stronger. But yeah, not the best place to go. But essentially here, as you can see, to describe the structure, it's basically a broken truck, and it only has one window. So traditionally what you do is just go for here and go for the 50-50. But before I go into that one, I just wanted to state that a nice thing to do before you have to commit and stay at the window is make a loop or two around the truck. So whoops, sorry, I'm just lagging out here, but as you can see below the truck there is a gap, just like in the crane, from which you can see the killer. So if the killer is trying to mind game you, you can actually use that at your advantage and make one loop or two before you have to commit to the 50-50 mind game of the window. So as you can see, if they're going from the left, you can see from the gap that they're going to left, and you go right, and then you wait a bit, and then using the heartbeat sensor you try to pin down if they're double backing or not. Even then, from this side you can see that whether they're double backing or not. So if they're not double backing, if they're committing, you keep going, and then if they're a standard M1 killer, you can make another round, and then using the same, of course, the gaps, just in your heartbeat sensor, you try to always be sure whether they're double backing or not. And then once they have enough distance on you, that's where you have to commit to this window. And just one little thing, and this is just based on my quick little testing, balanced landing does not trigger off this fall, unfortunately. So if you go in here, as you can see, it just doesn't trigger. So if you have balanced landing and you want to use it, go for, in this case, that big rock right there that can't spawn in any Autohaven map. So there's that little note right there. If you have balanced landing, if you have life, of course, it's gonna trigger. But yeah, once you're here, well, first of all, a little note: if you're coming over from here and you want to go and make a fast vault by hugging the wall, just be careful, because if you go from a straight line, well, now it doesn't. Well, now it does. It's kind of weird. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But as you can see, it blocks you. There's like a little invisible hitbox there for some reason. I don't know why, devs, but that's the case. So in that case, instead of hugging the wall tightly, just make sure you go here and then you go for the fast vault. And just to make your fast vault a bit more reliable, since it's fairly reliable but not that much, is that you just want to go here and go for the fast vault. So you basically want to go into like a kind of a hook shape, right? Kind of a C shape here, and you vault on the last second, so you have enough distance to you have enough distance in that angle. So if you don't know, for every window there is kind of like a cone shape area in which if you run for a certain amount of time, you're able to fast vault. If you don't meet the condition, you'll only be able to medium vault, and in some cases that will fuck you over, because you know the killer has enough speed and distance on you that they'll hit you on the medium vault but not on the fast vault. So just try to hug it and go for the fast vault. Alright guys, this is the main building for the Wretched Shop, one of the maps in the Autohaven Wreckers realm, and it's a pretty underrated building. Not many people know how to use it well against M1 killers, because that's its main strength. Against M1 killers, you can use it before having to exit the building, typically through this window. There are two variations. However, the main variation that is the stronger one is this one over here. And against M1 killers is pretty strong, and I'll show you why in a bit. But for now, I'm just going to run over the layout and the differences between the first variation and the second one. So in here, it's pretty much this window can spawn over here, So this is the first variation. In the second variation, the window spawns instead over here to our left. And you can always be assured that at the start of the match, the door will always be here, so it won't be broken, and that will give you some leeway against the killer if they do proceed from this side. But yeah, back to this main building. With this variation, it's strong against M1 killers, because what you can do is, before having to exit this window, which I see is the more common approach from most survivors, what you can do is use this car over here as a sort of extender of your loop before you have to actually commit to the window and you continue your chase. So it essentially extends your chase for free against pretty much most M1 killers, such as Wraith, Ghostface, Pig, those kinds of killers. So if you are loading to a match against that kind of killer, make sure to go into this building and make use of it, and you'll be able to get good chases against the killer. So in here, the main part that makes it strong is that there's this little obstacle in the middle, this little loop, if you will. But the thing about it is that you can see underneath it, and this allows you to not get mind gamed by the killer. So you can essentially reach the window free, no matter what side they do. So if they, let's just say, come from that corner over here and you go over here, if they commit, you can constantly see whether they're committing or not, and then go to the window over here. And then if they, let's just say, double back, over here you see to the right or to the left of Yui's arm right there, you see that they go back to the right side. You can just go in here and repeat, and essentially you'll be able to reach the window and go to another place. But on top of that, there's also what always spawns around this building are two pallets. So the first pallet is this one at the back side of this main building, and the second one is over here, so by this door, so besides this rock and junk of pile of junk over here. So that's pretty much it. It's even nice if you have a perk like such as Scythe, because you'll be able to use the window and really extend your loop against the killer. Alright guys, this is the second variation of the Wretched Shop main building, one of the maps in the Autohaven Wreckers realm. And yeah, as you can see, it's a fairly large building. It has a car loop here, which can be relevant depending on whether you have life and depending on whether the killer has broken this door. I would say it's the least reliable variant out of the two variants of this main building. But yeah, onto the layout. Here the window spawns over there instead of over here, and the breakable door spawns here, and it's always there, so the killer has to break it. But yeah, as to the actual map, building itself, this car loop can be pretty useful. So as you can see, there may not be a gen in here, so if you want to bring the chase into this main building, first of all you want to make sure that you pre-run from the gen or whatever interest or objective point that you were working on, whether it was a gen or you were healing someone or unhooking someone. You want to make sure that you run in with some distance away from the killer before you reach this point. This is because you essentially, from this point, you want to reach the window. So from here you want to see where the killer is coming from. So with this car loop, the neat thing is that you can see whether they're double backing or they're committing. So you can see if they're committing or if they are double backing with underneath the car, and you can just go back here and then repeat the process until the killer allows you to reach into the window. So yeah, with the placement between the window and the door, it's not so ideal if you don't have life, because even if you do manage to reach the window, with the killer being able to go through this little path around, it's pretty close to the window, so they don't lose much distance. So as you can see, I have the perk windows equipped here, and there is no reliable filler pallet, unlike in the first variant here. And as you can see from the window over to this pallet, it's pretty far. So that's why if you're really unsure, you might just want to equip Lithe, and you'll be able to reach this window. But yeah, not the most favorable variation out of the two. And of course, another aspect that you have to consider is whether you're going against an M1 killer or not, because killers such as, let's just say, Blight or Billy or maybe Huntress, so a ranged killer, or Spirit, someone who's fast, you are not likely to reach the window. You're gonna have to make a very early read and commit, so it's not like a guaranteed thing. But yeah, the thing is, like, if you have Lithe and they have this door already broken, even if they are kind of close behind you, you can see that you can quickly reach back to this pallet on our right. This pallet will always spawn in this variation to the right of this building. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this variation. This is the main building of the Blood Lodge map, which is one of the maps in the Autohaven Wreckers realm, and it's a pretty strong building. Across these two variations, there are two variations. I'm going to go through each one of them after the layout, but yeah, it's a fairly decent building. If you have balanced, this is definitely the place to go to if you do load up in this match, because as you can see, it's a two-story building. You can go ahead and you can see there in the balcony, just drop off and activate your balanced. But yeah, it's a pretty strong building. You can get a good amount of time looping the killer here. And a caveat here, this is against M1 killers, because anti-loop killers such as, I don't know, maybe Blight or Spirit, they may have more leeway to hit you in this building. But firstly, we have the layout, and then I'll go over the different ways you can loop this house. So first we have, just as a little note, regardless of the variation of this building, there's always this filler pallet that spawns over here. So regardless of whether you're going to loop the killer in the main building or not, just in case you need it, you're in this general area and you don't know where the spawns of the filler pallets may be. If it's early in the match, you can pretty be sure that this filler pallet is over here. So yeah, onto the actual building itself. Here for the layout, first there is a door here, and as for variations, in this variation the breakable door spawns over here, and in the other variation it spawns over there. But in this variation there's a breakable door over here, and there's a window over here. In the other variation there is the window over here and the breakable door over there. And now onto the looping paths. So unless you have balanced, you want to stick to using this window, because if you don't have balanced and you don't have enough distance on the killer, you can't really just drop off here and make it over to this window, because your stagger will just stop you enough before being able to reach that window in time and not get hit. But if you have enough distance, you can try and do it. Against an 115 killer, you might not be able to do it if they decide to mind game it, because if they do double back and you do drop off, you may not be able to reach this. So as for the other, just to illustrate the concept of what happens if you do the other thing where you don't actually drop off and you think that they're gonna double back, but they don't, and they commit, yeah, you definitely won't have enough time to reach this window. With a medium vault or with a fast vault, you have to position, you won't be able to reach it in time. But onto the actual looping path without bounce, you typically want to approach that window from the inside, because as you can see, and I'll show you what it looks like from the outside path, you'll be able to just walk or run in a straight path and get the fast vault. Obviously you want to look behind you, but essentially that is the strength of this path. If you plan to do it from the outside, you'll see that you actually have to kind of circle, and even then it's if you don't do it precisely enough, your path, you will only get a medium vault, and that can be the difference between, you know, getting hit or not. And also the last thing I want to do before showing you what it looks like with balanced landing is if you do take this path, remember there's if you don't know, there is the 3 window vault rule, in which after 3 vaults the entity will block the window for you, so you can't vault it again. So with that in mind, you want to make sure that after the third vault you're in a good position to reach the loop, a nearby loop, because if not, the killer can hit you before you reach a nearby loop. So in that case, the third rule in mind, we would know that if we approach from here, we vault 1, 2, and 3. We can't vault back in, and we have to make what is available to us. So in that sense, that's another reason why you want to loop. So start this loop from the inside, because in case the killer does make you go vault 3 times, and you want to make sure that the killer is deep enough into the house to make so that if you vault outside, you'll be able to reach any nearby pallets in time before they catch up to you. Whereas if you do it from the outside, 1, 2, and 3, if the killer is fast enough, especially if they have bloodlust, you pretty much have nowhere to go. You can't go out through here because they'll catch you over here, and as aforementioned, without balance, you will not make it over here. In fact, you might not even reach the point where you can, where you fall and hit the ground. They'll probably hit you before that. So that's the main looping part without balance landing. If you do have balance, well, obviously you can go ahead either as the first loop or the second one, depending on how you want to approach it. You can just go over here and proc it and just basically get one more loop. Just to be sure, you can just go straight in here. If you're more confident of how far the killer is from you, you can try and loop another time. If they're an M1 killer. If they're like Blight or something, yeah, definitely you don't want to try and do that, because they can catch up to you pretty quickly. This is the main building of the Blood Lodge. This is the second variation. And yeah, if you haven't watched the first variation, I'll just quickly go through a recap of what this main building is. This is the main building for Blood Lodge, on the maps in Autohaven Wreckers, and it's a pretty strong building, regardless of the variation. This is arguably the weaker variation, however it's still decent. And as you can see, it's a 2-story building, so if you have balanced landing, this can definitely be a good building to loop in, as you'll be able to get value out of that perk. But first, I'll go with the layout of this building just to familiarize yourself, particularly with this variation, and then I'll show you the main ways of looping it depending on whether you have balanced landing or not. So first, with the layout, I'll start with the outside just for a bit of context. So with both variations, so the first one or the second one, this filler pallet always spawns on the left side of this house. So even if you're looping within this house, or you're just looping generally around the map and you don't know which pallets are still left up, you can be sure that if, particularly if it's in the start of the match, that this filler pallet spawns on the left side of the house. So there's that there for your awareness. Then on to the layout of the map for the main building from the inside. From here we can see that the breakable door is over here and the open door is over there, whereas the window in this variation spawns over here instead of here from the first variation. And as you can see here, optimal way to loop it is from the inside of the house instead of the outside. This is particularly due to the 3 window rule that the entity has. So if you don't know, if you vault a window 3 times in a row in a chase against a killer, after the 3rd vault, the window will be blocked by the entity. So you want to be sure that you're vaulting in a way that after the 3rd vault, you're able to reach a nearby pallet. So what I mean by that is, let's just say that we vault, let's just start from the bad example to illustrate this concept. So if we were to decide to vault from the outside in, that will mean that with the first one and then 2nd and 3rd, the window would block. So if the killer, is has enough distance on you, is mind gaming you to the extent that after 3rd vault, they're over here, they'll be able to catch you along this path. So even if you do manage to land over here without balance landing, with a stagger, you'll be caught after the killer catches you over here. And yeah, this is why you pretty much want to loop from the inside out against a killer who knows what they're doing. A killer who doesn't know what they're doing will just vault after you and allow you to just use this loop as much as possible from this angle. But obviously a good killer wouldn't do that. So that is why you want to go from the inside. And out of the 3rd vault, so let's just say that you vault from the inside 1, and then the killer goes back after the 2nd vault over to this corner, and then they want to make you go in vaults here. You want to make sure that they're pretty much at the doorway, so that once you go out, let me just do that without light, just to provide you perhaps a better representation of what it looks like in a chase. So after you see that they're at the doorway, you vault immediately, and that way you can reach this nearby pallet. So that's why it's kind of neat to know that this nearby pallet is there, just so you can continue your chase without getting hit after the 3rd vault. So yeah, that's without balance, and of course without balance, I guess the better approach would be to, if you're doing it from the outside, with the 3rd one, make sure that the killer, commits enough. But even then, I still don't think that you'll be able to reach this place without getting hit. So I would say, just if you do approach from this angle, you do it early enough where the killer hasn't gone all the way over here, and you'll be able to reach the drop point. And yeah, if you're approaching it from this angle, yeah, I would say even then, because after here and the 2nd vault, if the killer mind games you correctly and they mind game you pretty early, you can't reach the drop point over here. So I would say, regardless of what angle you have, if you're coming from the inside or the outside, just try to make your way as soon as possible with balanced landing over to this drop point, and then you can use this window as many times. Well, not as many times, but you can use it afterwards. And depending on how much distance you have from the killer after balanced landing, you can make another loop across, around the house before you have to commit to this loop again. This is the main building of Gas Haven, one of the maps in the Autohaven Wreckers realm. And it's a pretty big building. It's one of the strongest main buildings in the realm, maybe, yeah, even in the game. And as you can see, it's a pretty big building. Inside of it there are 2 strong pallets. One you can't be mind gamed at if you have good enough reaction time, if they don't have bloodlust, and the other one is still pretty strong. It connects to this window. It also can connect to the outside pallets. So first I'm going to give a quick layout tour of the building, just to give you a bit of a sense of what's in the building and the surrounding pallets, and then I'll show you my advice on how to loop the killer in this building, and where to start from, and what to look out for. So first off, with the layout, I'll start off with the outside part, because with the inside everything is the same regardless of the variation. There are two variations in this of this building. The differences between these two variations lies within these outside pallets, specifically this pallet and this pallet on the side of the building over here. So in this variation, as you can see, the first pallet spawns between these two vehicles, and the second pallet spawns in between this junk and the left side of the station. In the second set, it would spawn the first pallet would spawn instead of there. It would spawn over here, in between this car and this gas booth. And instead of spawning the second pallet spawning over there, it would spawn over here. So they're kind of similar in location wise. So if you don't see, let's just see, if you don't see this pallet over here, you can say that it's over there. And if you don't see the pallet over there, it's over here. So that's the outside. Now for the inside, there are two rooms. I'll start with this one. This room always has this pallet over here in between these two shelves, pretty strong, as it connects to this window. There's always this breakable door over here. There's this open door always here. And in this second room, there are these two doors that always have breakable doors spawning at the start of the match. And a good killer would not break this door here, because that can lead to a pretty long chase, because you can loop this window to the outside and reach over to this side, assuming that this pallet is still usable. So a good killer would, good experience on this particular map would break this door instead. So with that said, that's the layout. What I suggest first is, if you have the option, is to first go through to this room and start, I guess, the first mind game with this pallet, because when it's dropped, if you have good enough reaction time, the killer cannot get you. So from here, definitely the killer has to commit pretty wide. You have good visibility. You can be pretty sure that once they reach this corner, that's when you vault, and they have to make all this distance over to here. And once they reach, I guess, this part here, that's when you vault as well. And without Bloodlust, the killer cannot get you here. And this is for a standard M1 killer, so if you're going against an anti-loop killer, just be a bit more careful in how safe you think this particular loop is. But yeah, against an M1 killer, they have to break it, and from either side, if you're over here and they're over there, they break it. Obviously, if they approach the pallet, you position yourself to go outside. If they break it, you go ahead and make yourself and go to the next room. And the same logic can be applied from the right side. And even then, it's even worse for the killer, because they have to walk a further distance to the pallet to kick it. And then, even then, you can angle yourself where you can check if they're actually committing to breaking the pallet or they're faking it, and just want to catch you out here before you reach the next window or pallet. So after the break, you can decide to do two things, essentially. Mainly, yeah, pretty much two things. One is play this pallet over here, and the second one is to reach this window. Or if the pallet spawns over here, if you have enough distance from the killer here, you can go to there. So you have a lot of options available. But one of them is, well, if you have life, it's kind of a no-brainer here. You just activate it, and even if they didn't break one of the doors, and even if they broke that door, they can't really catch you. You can make another loop and reach the inside pallet, or if there's a pallet over here, you can reach this pallet. But if you don't have life and they broke this door, if you only want to go over this window if there is one of these two pallets here, so next to these vehicles, so either here or here, Because if you vault and none of these two pallets, or none of this pallet, either here or here, is gone, then you can't really make it all the way back to the other side of the um, building, over to that open door over there, because it's just too long of a distance, and they'll catch you even without bloodlust if that door is broken. So that's just a bit of consideration to make. So that's why if you're not quite sure of whether that pallet spawned here or there, or if it has, if it has spawned, if it's still up, just stick by to this particular pallet. It's still pretty strong, and even then, if you get a stun from this side, you can manage to go over here and still reach this pallet or this pallet. So you have options there. But yeah, what many killers do, particularly strong killers, so this is something that you'll have to keep in mind of throughout the match. If you do happen to have chases before this one in the main building against a killer, so depending on how they respect the pallets, depending on how quickly they get their downs with other survivors on your team, and other factors that you have in your mind of how to gauge a killer's strength or the player behind that killer, you can expect them to respect the pallets more often than not than newer killers, because what they typically don't want you to get is this window. So if, let's just say, you go from over here and reach the pallet, they probably won't respect it, and they'll probably try to go over to this side in case you do drop it, so that you can't reach the pallet in time and you have to play the mind game. And another one is that if, let's just say, you're going over here from the killer, they break the pallets, for example, and you over here, what they won't do is follow through. They'll respect it and they'll go through around this side, just so they can make sure that you don't actually fall through the window. And yeah, that's basically it. You can use it against them. So if they respect from over here, you go ahead and make your way to the window. If there is a pallet that you know, you vault it. If not, then you can keep playing over here and see where they go. You can see that with most killers, you can see over the top of these shelves whether they're committing or not, and in whether they're double back, and you can react in time and reach the pallet. So this is a pretty strong loop. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And also, last little bit of a tip here: you can also extend your chase from here, depending on whether killer breaks it. Let's just say they break it from over here, you can go ahead and make it either depending on how much distance you have, but yeah, if you see them approach the pallet, you should position yourself to leave the loop, so that if they do break the pallet, you can go ahead and leave. So you can either take the window, or you can either go to the left if you know that the side pallets are still up. So you have options there. And if you take it from this car loop with this pallet, if they break it from here, you can obviously go to the left, or if they break it from the right, this is a bit of a smarter option from the killer. You can just go ahead to the right. Obviously, since there is a there is a longer way for you to go before you reach the actual loop inside the building, you may want to actually go to a different part of the map, because that distance is just way too much, assuming they haven't, of course, kicked down either of these doors. So yeah, that's pretty much the first variation. It's a pretty lengthy cover of this building, but that's just because of how big it is and how many pallets there are, how many strong pallets there are. So hopefully you understand why it took over 10 minutes for me to go over this particular main building. This is the Azeroth Shack of the Azeroth Resting Place map. And yeah, it's the main building in this map. It's kind of like Killer Shack. And I'll show you the layout here. So the gameplay of how you use this and Killer Shack is going to be similar. So first, for the layout, we have two doors. This one always spawns without a door, whereas this one always spawns with a breakable door. and this one is near the window over here. So in here, it's not much to it. It's very strong against M1 killers because, as you can see here, if you take it from this angle, it's a pretty long wall. They can't really mind game you. You even have this window over here that's broken, so you can see if they're really committing. And if they reach this spot, you can be pretty sure that you can go ahead and vault it. And you don't even need to go for a fast vault, so you can even just stay up here, maybe not up close, in case. But even then, you can see across the corner to our left here whether they're coming here or not. Because what some killers can do, if they're feeling a bit sneaky, is that if they know that you might stay at the window, like this, very close by, they'll just come out here to the left of the window and just M1 you, and they can do that. But here you can actually see if they're going past the corner, and then you can just adjust as needed. So it's a very safe place against M1 killers. Against anti-loop killers such as Huntress or Deathslinger, maybe even against, well, those two mainly are the ones that will pose you a problem, since they don't really care about the distance. They can still hit you from here. Killers like Nemesis, who have projectile or range, kinda, they still are gonna have difficulty hitting you at this spot. So depending on the killer that you're going against, you're gonna have to see how strong this building is in comparison to them. But yeah, it's not much to it. You can vault it 3 times. Make sure that, and this is why you probably want to vault it from the inside. If you don't know, there is the 3 vault entity blocker rule. So what that means is that after you vault a window 3 times, well, in a chase, it automatically gets blocked by the entity. So you want to make sure that after your 3rd vault, which mirrors your 1st vault, so if I vault in 1, 2, and 3, as you see, it matches to the 1st vault. So that's why we kind of want to start from the inside, because if we were to start from the outside, that will mean that 1, 2, 3, we would be stuck inside, and they could just meet us up here. That is assuming, of course, that the door here is open. But yeah, even then, if the door there is open, if you have enough distance, they can't really use this door, because you can just make your way over here and just see that they're committing, and then committing again, and you can make it over back to this door here and repeat, while having a lot of distance to see if they're actually committing or they're double backing over here. And yeah, that's pretty much it.